Hello, everybody. Welcome to Across the Bifrost. This is the Mighty Thor podcast, where on each and every episode, we explore the world of Marvel's Mighty Thor. I am your host, Ryan Doze, and everybody, the day is finally here. We have read Jason Aaron Thor comics for an entire year to get to today. We are finally talking about War of the Realms. Yes, I know you're cheering wherever you're at. You're excited, and you should be even more excited because for an episode this big, we had to get a guest that felt big enough, felt significant and marvelous enough to have on the show to talk about War of the Realms. So it is my pleasure to introduce the Vice President and Creative Executive of Marvel Digital Media. He is the host of official Marvel podcasts like This Week in Marvel and Marvel's Pull List. He is also the host of Jersey City's AvengerCon and the star of Marvel Studios' Miss Marvel. Ryan Penagos, aka Agent M, welcome to Across the Bifrost.
War comes to Across the Bifrost today, and I ride on the wings of what are those cool bog tiger things?
The bog tigers.
Yeah, man, so cool. Thanks for having me. It's wild that I'm on this episode instead of Jason or Russell, who should by all rights be the one steering the ship, but brother, I'm here for the ride. I've heard all the tales. I was there for it. Yes. And this is among my top 3 or 5 favorite comic book stories of all time. So I am here.
And I mean, I was just telling you this before we got started. I have listened to so many hours of you talk about comics. And whenever you bring up Jason or a Jason story, it's like, it seems like you get like kind of a little bit extra excited. You get a little bit extra, like there's that kind of that buzz, that feel with it. And you're right. We had Jason on the show a few months ago back in the summer to kind of do our year anniversary. And I mean, having Jason on was a riot. And Russell Dodderman's he's the white whale right now. He's the elusive one. So well,
he's a little busy forever all the time.
Right. But I mean, Russell's been so awesome and generous in our emails back and forth. But Ryan Penagos is here on Across the Bifrost. So Ryan, before we get kind of going into War of the Realms, because like I said, we've been marching up to this for a year, and it's been our big thing here on the show this year. But I want listeners to get to know you, because so often on your podcast, you're talking about comics, you're talking about news, you're talking about but very rarely like the listeners, I feel like, get like a kind of a biography of Ryan Penagos. Mm-hmm. So I wanted to tell listeners more about you. But a question we start off the podcast with is, where in the 9 realms do you call home? Now, like, you just pick a realm, or you could be serious. It doesn't matter to me. We've had so many realms go off our checklist so far this year.
Well, I feel like I have to choose Niflheim, simply because I have been branded with the symbol. So I like the cold, so that's good. I like the cold. I can hang with giant spiders and the dead. That's fine with me. So yeah, I guess I would go with Niflheim.
That I believe you are the first person to say Niflheim. So nice. we're knocking all these realms out. It's awesome. Well, because you work for Marvel and you do so many things with Marvel, I felt like it was appropriate to start our conversation with, what are some of your like first memories of comics and superheroes being in your life?
Gosh, it's one of those things. I'm an only child from a single mom, and comics felt like they were always there. I didn't have like a brother or necessarily a cousin who got me into comics. My uncle gave me some really old comics and got me started on some music stuff, but comics just, it feels like they were just somehow magically always next to me or around me. I remember, Spider-Man always being there. It is part of being a kid in the 80s, I guess, and then the 90s, where those characters for a certain sect of kids they were in the zeitgeist for us. They were just around, and it was great. So I probably started reading comics when I was 5 or 6. I
Wow.
often tell people, like, and this is a true thing. I can close my eyes and remember being like 7 or 8 years old, being at summer camp. My mom worked all the time, but one of her bosses was really generous and helped send me to this highfalutin fancy summer day camp that we definitely couldn't have afforded without them. And I remember sitting on like wooden posts looking at comics, and if I close my eyes, I can it's a weird thing that you can picture that world around me, or at least my memory paints it as such, that I was reading Punisher War Journal issues
Oh,
6 and 7, and I had Avengers West Coast, which is strange because I did not grow up in Avengers, especially not an Avengers West Coast kid, but I
Yeah.
had issues of the Byrne era where Scarlet Witch was, all messed up, and it's her holding the team and they're falling down or walking
Right.
away. And I still have copies of those. But I was a really little kid reading Wolverine and Punisher fighting brutally in the jungle. And look, I'm fine. Everything's fine. I've turned out okay. So yeah, early on it was comics, and then into obviously the cartoons and the video games came as those became bigger and better.
Did you have like early on, did you have like a favorite where like, oh, like this is my guy or this is my book that you really especially gravitated to?
I mean, I was a Spidey and X-Men kid, 100%
Yeah.
without question. Wolverine was the coolest ever. I read a lot of Punisher as a kid, but Wolverine was the coolest, and Spider-Man. I remember,
Yeah.
seeing Todd McFarlane and Eric Larson and Mark Bagley Spider-Man art and just losing my kid mind because nothing looked cooler than
Yeah.
them, and the drama and the fun of X-Men comics. We would go to this laundromat near our house, and my mom would be doing laundry, and I would go directly next door to a used bookstore and buy issues, beat up old issues of Byrne Claremont Uncanny. And
Oh,
so
wow.
I had full run of Dark Phoenix Saga and Wendigo stuff and Alpha Flight stuff, and like those early, from the 110s to the 1 to 140, and like I got a copy of, I didn't get Days of Future Past, but I got 143, which is the issue where Kitty is alone against the Nagari in
Wow.
the X Mansion, which is still one of my all-time favorite comics. But reading those and then What If issues over and over and over again as a kid in that laundromat, like What If too. What If is always going to be my favorite thing because they killed everyone. It was always a nightmare horror show. Anything could happen. Every character was like possible in every story. So yeah, it was a lot of things, but mainly Spider-Man, X-Men, and whatever involved those characters.
So you mentioned What If. Was
Mm.
What If kind of like your I've started to say this on the show and I don't even really know what I mean by this, but is it like your comfort food comic?
Yeah,
Like it's
yeah.
it's
I think that's a great way to describe it. What I have a full run on the spinner rack that's right behind my head, and as we're talking over video, I have a full run of What If. I have a full run of which is our humor mag from the
right.
90s, which is also a reason why I have such one of the many reasons why I have weird humor. What If, Not Brand Ech.
Really?
Those are the ones that
Wow.
I would probably classify as comfort food. That and the some like various crossovers like Infinity Gauntlet,
Right.
Executioner Song, things like that. Like I can go to and know exactly where the story goes, but still be captivated and fully brought into the story every time.
Yeah, like I love the idea of like having these comics where it's like, oh, like I used to know like those comics will make me feel like warm and fuzzy inside. And like for me, that's like Marvel Team Up. Like I'll go back to Marvel Team Up and just be like, okay, like what Spidey and okay, Captain Britain. Okay, sure, why not? But like What If is such a good one. And I just I don't hear enough people like collecting What If.
Which is, yeah, I mean, which is fine. I think there's one issue that I might miss. It's like 114 or something, or maybe I got it somewhere along the line the last couple of years, but we've never collected the 90s run. It's not all on Marvel Unlimited. It's a
Really?
damn shame. Yeah, we have like maybe 15 issues out of 120 or so, it's crazy. The
Wow.
90s one specifically is what I grew up on, and
Oh,
I
okay.
love the 70s and 80s, and then we have the full run of those on MU. But yeah, someday.
Got pull some strings, like put a little weight on that.
Eventually, look, we've got an animated series on Disney Plus, so we need more What If comics to get into people's hands. Why
Right,
not reprint
right.
this?
So you go from like being this kid that is collecting these comics and reading them like right off the pages. How did it get into your mind like, oh, I could actually like do some writing, I could be creative, what was that like impetus for you to be a creative yourself in the ways that you have been?
I have this early memory of my friend Michael and I when we were kids, about probably around 10 years old, or 11 years old, because the trading cards, Marvel Universe Series 1 and Series 2 were out. And those were just life changing for me
Yeah.
too, because they introduced me to new characters. They had win-loss records, they had stats and like all the details, and told me about things that I didn't know. And there was like that for me really like was the big, dump of gasoline onto the fire that really burned it. But around that time, we were making our own characters, and from like people around us, we would like go to the local like community pool, and like that old lady there and this guy here, we would go back and then we would write little biographies of them, and then say, and Stan Lee presents da, 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 and we would give them a name. So we, at the top of 90s Marvel comics, we would have a really great 2-3 sentence description of who these characters were in the books, and then say Stan Lee presents the Amazing Spider-Man or whatever it
Yeah.
was. And so we were creating at that point, and it was just one of those early things that was a creative bit of business going on in my head. Although that said, it didn't really occur to me until years later when I was in college that was what I kind of like, going into that route made sense for me.
Yeah.
Otherwise it was just like other pursuits.
So I know you've referenced before, like you worked at Wizard for a while.
Mm-hmm.
So how did, like, that's, I mean, it's one of those like comic book adjacent kind of things, like you're in like that world. How did that opportunity come to fruition to work there for a while and then like eventually make the jump to Marvel later on?
Yeah, I had I had been going for a math degree at one school in
Okay.
college, and I was really good at math for a long time. I was a mathlete and proud. And then in like my second year of college, just one day I couldn't do it anymore. It was like looking at a different language that I didn't know and
Huh.
didn't understand anymore. It was really strange. And so I had to shift gears and figure out what to do. And I was dating a woman who was going to a different school, and she was in their nascent journalism program, and I had been taking photos of hardcore and punk bands, and I had done like an online blog, whatever you would call it, where I'd put up my photos, or I'd write record reviews. I would do a lot of sort
Yeah.
of journalisty, fanzine type stuff, but
Okay.
about music. And I was like, oh, maybe I'll do journalism. And so then I went to a different school, was graduated out of their journalism program, and saw an ad as I was getting close to leaving school for Wizard magazine, for Toy Fair magazine. They needed an assistant editor. And I was like, I can do that. I don't know what it means, but I can do that. I have a degree. And
You can conquer the
exactly.
world.
Like, yeah. And so I went and I applied for it. They called me a couple weeks later. The guy on the phone was like, hi, is this Ryan? I'm like, yeah. And he said, hi, this is Justin Acklin at Toy Fair magazine. We saw that you applied for the assistant editor position. I got that job, but I need some writers. Would you like to write for me? And I was like, yes, 100%. So that opened the door. And Justin Justin remains a very good friend of mine. He's a vice president now, and he works with Nintendo, and he's great. But he was prompted to do that by Matt Senreich, who went on to create Robot Chicken, and
Oh gosh.
we owe our. I always find it interesting that I owe my career in many ways to various different people who gave me opportunities when they didn't need to. So I'm very appreciative of that. And so, I wrote freelance for Toy Fair magazine for several years, in writing about, the collector toy market, which I didn't know anything about, but I researched and I did the work, writing about military toys made in Hong Kong, doing phone calls at weird hours to interview people. It's like, I didn't know it, but sure. I wrote about it because I did the research. And eventually someone let me know that there was a job posting for their research department at Wizard that would cover all the magazines, and asked if I would like to come in to interview for it. And I'm at that point 21 years old.
Wow.
Yeah, about 21. And of course I go up there and I'm wearing a really terrible ill-fitting suit and a tie with Eric Larson Venom art on it. Because
Of
I
course.
had that, yeah, I had that tie for whatever reason. I hope I still have that tie. I lent it to a friend of mine a couple of years ago. I hope I still have it. But I wore that and went to the interview and just bombed it, man. I
Oh,
was
wow.
terrible. Flop sweat and like stammering, mumbling through questions. And I'm sitting in this room, and this great conference room we had at Wizard, that was a long table, and up on the top of the wall, up above the walls, were framed copies of several issues. And my first issue of Wizard was number 8, and it had this beautiful Whilce Portacio cover of Bishop. Bishop was one of my favorite characters, and he was so cool. He had the big mullet, and Whilce's art is just gorgeous. And I was like staring at it, like, "Oh, you like that cover?" I was like, "Yeah." Like, what about it? And I'm like, "It's cool." Like that kind of stuff. And they were like, "Great, let's just finish this." And so, like, mercifully ended the interview. The senior manager of the magazines, Joe Yanarella, walks me out to my car. Thank you, blah, blah, blah. Go to start my car. I'd left the lights on because I was nervous.
Oh,
Battery died. This is like
fantastic.
an hour north of Manhattan and an hour and a half from where I lived in Brooklyn at the time. And so I had to tail between my legs, walk back in, ask them to start my car, help me jumpstart my car. Just terrible. Luckily, I kept doing my freelance and being reliable and being,
Yeah.
being honest, reliable, forthcoming, and like diligent about things. And so another job came up as a price guide assistant for Wizard, and they said, "Hey, we've got a different job. Maybe you want to come in and interview for this." And that was probably like spring of 2003. So I was
Okay.
22, spring or summer. Go in, interview for it. Don't remember a thing about it other than I did great. A couple weeks later, they called me while I was walking down the street to get a sandwich, and on my little flip phone, and they offered me a job. And then boom, I started at Wizard in I guess the summer fall of 2003 as a price guide assistant. Was quickly promoted to price guide editor, and just worked real hard, tried to do more, tried to be very collaborative and very honest and very excited, try to keep positive about things, and make things better as much as I could, and refine
Yeah.
processes and do all the things that I thought needed to be done. And as I went along, I asked for more work, I asked for more departments, I asked for, hey, I'm doing the price guide. I love comics. I mean, I love video games. Can I do the video game section? Great, that's yours. I love indie comics. Can I do those? Great, that's yours. And after 2 years there, they said, you can be, we want to promote you to associate editor. And at the time, Wizard needed beat reporters. So one
Okay.
person on staff would be the main conduit between the magazines and a publisher or a company. So there was someone for Marvel, for DC, for Dark Horse, for Image, various other things on the Wizard side, and then one for Hollywood, who just covered the Hollywood beat, which is always made me laugh. And so I had just, working there, I got the Marvel gig because I was a big Marvel fan, and I made, small relationships with people. But then from there, I really built my relationships with people at Marvel. I gained trust. I remember going to creative editorial retreats while I was still on staff at Wizard, which is not a thing we do at Marvel. We don't really bring in outsiders. So I feel very fortunate to have seen that before I even was inside at Marvel, and built great relationships. And one day I was visiting Marvel in summer of 2006, going around to the various offices, asking the editors for questions and talking about what they were excited about and trying to find things to talk about for the magazine. And then walking through, and I'm wearing a heavy metal band t-shirt, Most Precious Blood, and I'm wearing like cargo camouflage cargo shorts, and because like, you know, this is just who I am, you know.
Yeah, right.
And the one of the vice presidents in his office says, "Hey Ryan, come on over here for a second." I'm like, "Hey John, what's up?" And he says, "Just sit down, let's talk." I'm like, "Okay, great." And he was the vice president of their digital media department at the time.
Okay.
And John Dokes was his name, and he'd been at Marvel in the 90s, and he came back in the mid 2000s. And we just talked and talked and talked. And then he was like, "Hey, I'm going to bring somebody else in here." It's like, "Okay, John." And he brought someone else in.
What are
and
you
they
up to,
talked.
John?
It was like, they're asking a lot of questions. And partway through, I'm like, "Oh, this is an interview. They're interviewing me for a job that they haven't told me about."
I didn't wear my Venom tie.
Yeah, right. But I think it's one of those things where I was honest and reliable and trustworthy and myself, without putting on airs or being anything other than who I was before and after and during. And so they gave me an opportunity. John reached out that opportunity, and I joined Marvel in 2006 as a digital media associate editor, and went on from there.
I mean, and there's I think it's maybe easy for some listeners to be like, "Oh, he's the podcast host guy." Like he just hosts podcasts. But like now, I mean, you laugh because it's just like the next question is, what all goes into your job?
Yeah. I mean, so that's 2006.
Yeah.
In 4 days of when we're recording, October 30th, that will mark 16 years for me at Marvel. In 16
Congratulations.
years, thanks. It's crazy. In 16 years, I was among the first few people. We created our social media. I remember coming home, must have been 2007 or 2008, from San Diego Comic-Con on the plane, and I'm sitting literally in the last row of the plane because that was where my station in life at that point. And John Dokes comes from way up ahead on the plane. He drops a magazine on my table, and he says, "Let's look into this Facebook thing." And I'm like, "Okay, John." And so that I read an article in Wired about Twitter in 2007 or 2008, and so invited the founders of Twitter to Marvel to figure out how we could do stuff together. And so I built up all of our social media. I was there to build up our video stuff. I built up all of any news you see on marvel.com has evolved from what I started, 16 years ago. Our podcasts, I brought them back to life with This Week in Marvel, because we had been doing stuff and then stopped, and I wanted to do more. So created a lot of the content that we do for digital media, along with a number of other people, and has evolved greatly over the course of 16 years. But I don't know that it would be the same had I not gotten those things started with folks like John Cirilli back in those days. So over the course of time, I had run our entire editorial and social media teams for Marvel.com for 10 plus years. I was hosting and videos and live streams and podcasts, and working with the website crew to develop not just the editorial stuff, but like the look and the feel and the content around everything, the development of our apps and other stuff, working closely with every part of the company. I doing stuff with studios and games and animation and consumer products and all kinds of stuff. Eventually it kind of became a lot too much. And
it sounds like a lot.
it was a fair amount. I was not home as much as, and literally before the pandemic and before my jobs really changed, I was traveling every 2 or 3 weeks, and it was becoming a little difficult. But eventually we split my job, and I decided to bring in someone very, very capable and who has done, I think, a better job than I ever did of running our editorial and social media teams, and Ron Richards. And then I was able to focus on developing what our like the shows that I was on, those podcasts, the ones you mentioned earlier, working more behind the scenes creatively on stuff like audio or video or other projects. And
Yeah.
so now that's a lot of what my time is. It's doing these things in front of the camera or in front of a microphone, but also working behind the scenes on some projects. I have a number of things that we do, some stuff that has not been announced yet, that is still ways off, but it is incredibly huge for us. So I'm very excited about that. We have a show called Long Story Short, which is on YouTube, which is um, I hope very funny. I'm the creative lead on that one, and my favorite thing about the latest episode, which is about Sam Wilson and Steve Rogers becoming sort of friends and both being Captain America, is making sure Red Skull ends the episode feeling very sad and then gets hit in the head with both Captain's America shields from different directions, and that's how we end the episode.
Great.
If I can't clown on a Nazi, what am I doing with my life?
You at this point, you just have to. It's like you got to do it. Yeah. There's a few things about, like, because through this job, I'm just absolutely sure you've gotten to do your fair share of cool things. But when you're getting into this, you're starting to, like, meet these creators and interview them, and you're doing, like you said, the Marvel beat with Wizard, and then you get to work for Marvel. Was there a creator along the way that you were like, oh no, if I meet this person, like, I'm gonna fanboy so hard, like, this person's like the one I want to meet? Just who makes you feel the most like a fan?
It's hard to look at that objectively now after 16 years and try to remember all those things. I remember the first time I met Stan Lee was backstage at San Diego Comic-Con before he went out for a signing, and
wow,
and him being so gracious with his time and being lovely. And I remember being nervous at that point, but I was still young in my career, so it made sense. And having talked to him a dozen or more times over the years, when he, after one interview, which I'm sure he did a lot of times, saying, "Oh boy, that was a great interview, thank you for that," I was just like, what? Wow, it was great. That was so cool. It was great. That was wonderful. I'd met Garth Ennis probably 2012 for the first time, but in Barcelona, and got to, like, hang out late nights and drink with him and Glenn Fabry and a bunch of other creators. And so Garth was always one of my absolute favorite writers for all his work on Preacher and the Demon and his Punisher stuff and everything else. And similarly, Steve Dillon, probably my favorite artist outside of Jack Kirby. And so I only met Steve once, and I don't know that I was nervous about it. I was just, like, happy to meet him, what I mean? And it's I have a piece of original art, which was my going away gift from the guys at Wizard when I left to join Marvel. At that point, we had a tradition: if you were leaving, everybody pitched in and got you a piece of art from your favorite artist of something that so cool would make sense to you. And so Ricky Purdon, who was at Wizard at the time, who is now Marvel's director of talent relations, he got Steve Dillon to draw Etrigan the Demon riding MODOK. And it's it is one of my I have my child and my wife, and this piece of art is, like, there in my realm of things I love, and I have it so I can, anytime I'm just need something creatively, I can look at it. It's right over there. And so it's really special to me, seeing him. But outside of that, I come from a hardcore punk background. So the idea that we're all in this together, that we do this ourselves in a lot of ways, that we're not better than each other, that, like, hey, I should be able to buy the t-shirt or the record or the comic book from the person who made it and just have a cool chat with them about it, is part of my DNA for the past 25-ish years. So I don't really I don't get that, like, weird about it necessarily.
I maybe I should have rephrased it, like, who makes you the most excited. But there's another question that I've been just dying to ask, and maybe I've missed this on the show. Where did the Agent M moniker come from?
I will say, just to your other point, the people that make me the most excited are the people who I think make me happy about
Yeah.
reading comics. It's sort of like a symbiotic relationship, and then and oftentimes I becomes friends with them. And like I had just given a 3 long boxes full of trades that were in my basement to a friend of mine who's in the army to just share with some soldiers.
Cool.
And because you always need something to read when you're out there.
Right.
So he sent me a picture back, and it's him and one of the soldiers, and she's holding a giant stack of books, but one of Jerry Duggan and Brian Posehn's Deadpool books is front and center, and she's got this giant grin on her face. And I sent it to Jerry, and I was like, Jerry, I'm corrupting the army with your Deadpool comics, and I love it. And I can being able to talk to folks like Jerry Duggan or Jason Aaron as my friends, whose work genuinely I absolutely adore, truly deeply. That makes me excited. That's what makes me excited these days.
Awesome.
And so to the Agent M question, the gentleman who hired me, John Dokes, we were talking about our plans for the site in 2006 and what we wanted to do at that time. Blogs were very popular, and we had a couple of blogs going at the time, but they were sort of scattershot. There was no organization around them. There was no driving force. So we had discussed about, all right, one of the job roles will be to organize and make sure the blogs are coming in regularly. We're getting content.
Yeah.
And, Tom Brevoort, who is, senior vice president, executive editor, and, one of the greatest minds at Marvel Comics history, in my opinion, he was doing a blog and stuff like that. And I was like, all right, I'll do a blog, and I'll do it behind the scenes, and I'll do, sort of like take the knowledge and the sort of things that I've done at Wizard and put a spin on it here. Okay. And so I was going to do a behind the scenes blog, and I love Nick Fury. I thought, Nick Fury's cool character. Let's do it sort of spy themed. And so John was like, that's a great idea. We'll give you a secret agent name, come up with a name. And I was like, oh shit, can I curse on this? I try.
Go right ahead.
Yeah. In my head, I was like, shit. So I'm thinking about it. And when we have our conversation, he's like, so what'd you come up with? I was like, Agent P for Penagos. And he's like, no, Agent M. And he literally walks away. He walks, and I was like,
he just dropped it and was out.
1, he's the boss. 2, it is better. It sounds better, maybe because after 16 years, it has become a moniker of mine, and so it just feels normal. But yeah, it was that was the way it was done. It was just Agent M for Marvel.
Awesome. I assumed the M meant Marvel, but I was like, how do we get there? Speaking of like how we've gotten to different places, we're here today to talk about War of the Realms. You are friends with Jason Aaron. I will say an appreciator and admirer of his work. When we got to talk to him a few months ago, it was one of those moments where you're like, I'm meeting the guy that literally made me want to read comics. And it was a complete honor and privilege to talk to him. But you have this story with Jason that I really love, and I wanted you just tell listeners, like, how did you meet Jason Aaron, but then also the tattoo story, because you and Jason are bonded by ink.
Right. I can't say that there's any interesting meet cute between Jason and I, other than he was really like put his wheels to the ground and often rolling in 2008 at Marvel. He'd done a couple of things, but Ghost Rider and Wolverine come out the same week, his first 2 big Marvel projects.
You just covered that with Corey Smith.
Yeah, which I didn't realize it was the same week. And that is now seared in my brain of like, how is that possible? That one of the defining talents of a generation in comics puts out 2 comics on the same day, or 2 of his comics, early comics, his first big forays into ongoing storytelling, happen the same day. And they're so fucking good. It's mind-numbing. Anyway, so he was really coming up at Marvel in 2008, and then 9, 10, yada yada yada. So we just met through the work at at Marvel.
Yeah.
I would, see him at retreats, or probably interview him for the website, or talk to him at conventions, whatever it was, and just became pals because he's a big tattooed silly man who loves wrestling, and I'm a big tattooed silly man who loves wrestling. He has big dumb facial hair. I have big dumb facial hair, which I will tell. I hate this, but I've grown a beard over the last 2 months that I like, and my wife likes, but I've always had the mustache. And Jason and I always argue whenever we talk to each other. He's like, why do you still have that mustache? I was like, why do you still have that bald head? But he's always like, not until you get a beard will we be truly friends. Well, now, Jason, I've got a beard.
Yeah.
And I hate that I have given in to his beardedness. So yeah, we became friends, go to tiki bars together.
Guy loves his tiki bars.
Smart.
Yeah.
Good tiki bars is a fine thing. He loves Disney World, going there, taking his family, or just being there on his own. I love that, it's like there's just a lot of things we love. He's so soft spoken though. It's like half the time I'm just like, Jason, get as riled up and as crazy as I am. But
right.
That's just not his way, man. That's just not his way. So when I had heard all of his story ideas for years, and the build up to War of the Realms for, a year or two before, more than that really is, he was on Thor and talking about his different plans. And, when we do these retreats and hear the plans coming for the future comics, and different creators have different ideas, and some are further out in what they want to do. And so Jason had lots of plans, and we knew that War of the Realms was going to be a big deal. And, I gotten to that point where I probably at that point was a vice president at Marvel, and could get some stuff done here and there that is a little wacky. And so, we were doing videos and podcasts and a lot of stuff, and finding ways to support War of the Realms in new and interesting ways. And so I said, well, I want to do a War of the Realms after show. We'll talk to the guys. And so there's a bunch of episodes of This Week of Marvel, which is, covers, of the time, what was going on, and spoiling some stuff, some spoiler casty things that we did.
Yeah.
And I also said, look, let's take Jason and I, and let's get tattoos of these symbols that we really fully created for the 10 realms, for War of the Realms, because they were promotional. We did a lot of promotion with them. They're all throughout the volumes. They're in the logo, all this stuff. Let's tattoo these symbols on us. And Jason was like, yes. I don't even know if I finished speaking where he had already said yes. I mean, he's like, as long as I can find space for it, because he's all tattooed up. And I was like, I know I've got plenty of space. I just need to get this approved. And so he was on board. And then I somehow got Marvel to pay for Jason, Aaron, and I to get tattooed, to record it on video and audio.
That is awesome.
And it was a snowy day. The two of us hanging out, clowning on each other for 5 hours with my tattoo artist, Dave Wallen, in Brooklyn, who is just the best. And it's one of my crowning achievements at my career at Marvel, that I was able to get a giant corporate entity to pay for me to get tattooed, and with as an actual promotional resource. There's a bunch of content out there for it. Yeah. And it's cool as hell, man.
I mean, and I was telling you before we got started here, it actually, there's a insert in the Marvel Unlimited version of one of the issues we're going to talk about, where it's you guys both with the picture of you guys showing off your tattoos. And I was like, this is the coolest thing. And it made me want to decide oh man, well, which realm should I get? Man, I felt like I should just I need a Thor tattoo. I gotta, you guys got me started on a really good idea, I feel like. But we are going to jump into War of the Realms after a very short break. And we're gonna talk all the things that are in this comic. There's no possible way we're going to talk about every single detail, but we're going to try to hit most of it. So we'll be right back after this very short break. Hey everybody, hope you're enjoying this awesome chat with Ryan Penagos today on the episode. And I hope you're getting excited for us to talk about War of the Realms. Just wanted to take this brief moment to remind you that for a few bucks a month, you can join the Thor Corps and get bonus episodes, early episodes, things like that you can't get here on the main feed. You can also help us determine who we're going to be spotlighting in 2023. We've got it down to a few options, but if you're a Thor Corps member, you and I are going to have a conversation, and I'm going to get your input on who we should talk about next year here on the Mighty Thor podcast. So for a few bucks, you can join the Thor Corps. It'd be an awesome way to support the show and keep everything going here on Across the Bifrost. But either way, I hope you continue to enjoy this conversation with Ryan Penagos from Marvel, Agent M. Okay, everybody, here we go. We're finally here at War of the Realms. This is a massive crossover event. It encompassed so many different books, and the lead up to this, Ryan, like, correct me if I'm wrong here, but the lead up for this was like 4 or 5 years. Like,
yeah, it's the War of the Realms is first mentioned in the first issue of the Mighty Thor, with art by Russell, and you know, you have light elves floating in space, and like that's the first drumbeat of war. So yeah, I think that's something like 4 years before,
yeah.
5 years before.
I mean, and Malekith has been at work since, the accursed storyline, and there's so much going towards this big, huge story for so long. And it's finally here. And when I reread it in like a few hours, and I was like trying to really like enjoy it and savor it like a good meal. I was trying to just, enjoy every single bite. And I still finished it so quickly because I was like, it flows so quickly. And I just want to give a brief synopsis for listeners who maybe haven't read it yet. I mean, if you haven't read it yet, come on, like, you gotta get on that. But this story is the culmination of Jason Aaron's, very many years writing Thor, and great artists. Russell Dodderman is the one who does the art for this main these main issues. And it's the normal gang. It's Matt Wilson, it's Joe Sabino. I was telling Joe Sabino a few weeks ago when we interviewed him, I was like, I kind of, in my brain, I was like, in my mind, like, they all just like hang out together and like make comics. It's like a boy band on tour. And he assured me that it was not that way. But this creative team that has provided so many great comics, they're finally here for this event. And Malekith finally invades Midgard. He finally sends all of his legions, his generals. He's got trolls, dark elves, frost giants, all of them. They show up in New York City because what Marvel crossover doesn't involve New York City at some point. They all show up there. They are wreaking havoc, and all the heroes and all the Asgardian refugees, they're jumping into action. I love the first little scene with Spider-Man jumping in and helping Freya. That was so funny to me.
That one I found so funny because I live in the Bronx. I live in an area called Riverdale, and so Spidey is for some reason in the Bronx. And there's like look, you have to have suspension of disbelief if you are reading anything fictional, because there's going to be stuff that you go, what? How is that possible? But I was definitely taken aback. I was like, Spider-Man, why are you in the Bronx? There's no reason for you to be up here. That's very far from Queens, very far from like literally anywhere you would be. But hey, it's all good.
Whatever. It's the war starts with the invasion, but Thor has been tricked to go to Jotunheim, and Malekith is throwing every frost giant he can at Thor, keeping him busy, while the heroes in New York City and on Earth, they try to push back the invasion. Eventually, Doctor Strange he powerfully evacuates the whole city, and the heroes are back at Avengers Mansion. They start regrouping. They're like, well, to win this war, we need Thor. We need him, and we need him to finish the job fighting Malekith. There's a lot that goes on in the tie-ins and the other issues that are related to the storyline, which we are going to do a bonus episode on. So we're going to talk about War Scrolls. We're going to talk about the War Avengers, Strike Force. We're going to talk about all that. But today we're just going to focus on the main issues. And eventually Thor is freed from Jotunheim. He comes back, and the Bifrost is being kept open by my sleeper favorite character of this crossover, Daredevil. This is a Thor crossover, Ryan, but it feels like it's also a little bit of Daredevil story.
Yeah, it is a Thor crossover, but it's at the same time definitely a Marvel Universe story, which
Yeah.
is why you get great moments from various Avengers, and you get Daredevil at a really cool part of it. Yeah, there was something we always talked about, the publishing team always talked about internally, of this is a Marvel Universe story.
Yeah.
But while it is a Thor story, it will affect and encompass the entirety of at least Earth and the other nine realms,
Yeah.
to make sure it feels like it's a cogent part of the Marvel universe.
And internally, is this what the publishing side would consider a line wide event?
Yeah, I would. Yeah, because it hit all the different books. You had X-Men tie-ins, you had Spidey stuff, you had the Daredevil stuff, you had characters from all across the various families and books, finding ways to tie into this. So yeah, definitely.
And this storyline really culminates with Odin and Freya have a really great moment where they defend the Black Bifrost. They end up blowing it up, and Malekith's kind of last ditch effort is to kind of goad Thor into facing him in a situation where only Thors can fight him. Like only Thor can enter this, the Stonehenge area where he's kept Odin and Freya prisoner. But it doesn't say only one Thor can show up.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the themes of Jason's run on Thor is that there's many different versions of Thor, and there's lots of different Thors. So the last issue, A Storm of Thors, features Jane, old man Thor, King Thor, and young Thor. They all go and they fight Malekith, and Mjolnir is reforged. He shows up, and all this badassery ensues, and Thor is victorious. They defeat Malekith, and then in the Omega issue we're going to talk about on that bonus episode, where lots of different things happen as a result of the War of the Realm being won. But yeah, that's kind of the wide sweeping theme of the crossover. But Ryan, I'm just curious to know, what were some of your favorite parts of this storyline, and maybe we can just dig in on those for a little bit, whether it's characters or moments.
One of the things, having reread it, so part of my role at Marvel is literally reading everything we put out every week. And so sometimes that's 15 comics, sometimes that's 24, 25 comics. And so it's a lot of reading, plus the other stuff that we do for our shows. So I don't often get to go back and reread stuff for fun.
Yeah.
So I found this, exercise to be great, because I was able to go back and reread this for the first time in quite a while. And one of the things that I loved most about it is how timeless it actually kind of feels. Aside from sort of what Thor not having Mjolnir for most of it, and certain things, it feels like a Marvel Universe story that you could just pick up and see. There's a couple of jibes at Wolverine, I thought you were dead, because he had been dead previously.
Right.
But other than that, you could read this as a Marvel fan and not need to know where it sits in the Marvel timeline, which I think is really helpful for someone who will come in inevitably to read this as just ooh, this looks cool, or ooh, I've heard good things,
right?
To be able to pick this up and read. I mean, there's so many great moments. The part in issue 2 where Odin arrives with the Valkyr is so cool. It's so cool. And one of those things about this is, so I know all the things that are going to happen in our comics and stories, and in micro or macro ways, well before I read the comics. And sometimes after long periods of time, what I know from earlier may supersede what I remember reading, you know what I mean? And so my memory gets jumbled up into things, and So like in the early planning of like the Valkyrie come in and they get slaughtered as a sort of part of that story that I understood from early on. Whereas reading it here, the nuance of like they turn the tide here.
Right.
Everything, like, had they been able to continue riding on, the war might have been over. But Doctor Strange's, I completely forgotten that Doctor Strange's spell is too powerful and he takes too many people. And
yeah,
like the tide starts to turn, and then it turns back for Malekith by accident. And it's this very like classic Marvel moment of, you know, a heroic deed that also comes with consequences and horror and slaughter. The ends of issues, Jason is so good, and Russell and the whole team. Jason as a writer is so good at cliffhangers and at final pages, and at that thing that is so important for us in comics to like make you say, God damn it, I need the next issue right now.
Don't make me wait.
Yeah, why do I have to wait a month for this, or weeks, or whatever? And now it's collected, you know, you can just go on. But that the end of the first issue, the end of the second issue, like those, there are moments and dialogue beats and throughout all this that are really absolutely incredible. And so like just want to listen to like what the hell's that metal band that they're like very like
I do not know.
Oh man, I literally was just listening to them a couple weeks ago because they had come up. Anyway, but like, you know, you just want to listen to some really awesome metal and read this story. Jason's ways of threading in little moments into the big story, both as like asides, like, you know, there's one scene in like issue 5 or 6 where there's just a caption box about something going on with Moon Knight, and you don't even see it here, but I was like,
right,
hot damn, I want to read that part. What's going on over there? That sounds friggin' awesome. Like there's so much happening in here that there's no slowing down. There's no need to slow down. It is so tightly plotted and given, you know, monumental moments without it. It doesn't slow down, but at the same time, it doesn't feel like you're overwhelmed by it, or at least
it's a good balance.
Yeah.
I think I've said this you know, going through this run again this year, having, you know, done our retrospective, that I think one of the things that Jason's the absolute best at is efficient world building. Like he can build a world so quickly that I care about, that I want to be invested in. Like those little caption boxes, he tells you like Moon Knight's over here doing this thing, and then he'll like describe it in a way where you're like, yeah, I'm like, I want to know that story right now. Yep. And I think this is one of those, sometimes when I read a crossover event, I'm like, I might pick up the tie-ins, I might here and there, but here I'm like, I want to read everything. I want to read War Scrolls, I want to read Journey into Mystery, I want to read all of them. And I feel like that's like this, it's like the cherry on top of Jason writing this main story, because obviously he's not going to go out and write every tie-in, but like, you know, give these other authors a kind of like a sandbox to play in that happens under the umbrella of this bigger event. And I thought that was just so good. I got halfway done with War Scrolls last night after I got done with this, because I was like, I want to know more about what happens with Daredevil. You know, I want to be reminded of that great the interludes and stuff. So
that has art by Andrea Sorrentino, right?
I believe so. Correctly? Yes. Yeah.
Oh, beautiful. So good.
Artwork was one thing I wanted to talk about with you, because Dodderman is recently, I did one of those like, oh, okay, like ask me anything. Like I'm on a trip and I just want to talk about Thor. And someone said, who's your favorite Thor artist? And I know I'm probably supposed to say Simonson, I'm probably supposed to say Jack Kirby. And I love those two artists. Like it's not a slight. Dodderman was the first Thor comic I picked up. Dodderman was the first trade I bought. You know, I was like, you can't beat your first. So when, you know, I've had a chance to just speak with him over email every once in a while, and I'm like, hey, why don't you like do interior artwork anymore? He's like, War of the Realms, man. Like, it did so much.
Yeah.
But he really is at his peak here. Like,
Yeah, it's like yeah, it is an artist at the peak of their powers, and supported by maybe the greatest colorist of the generation. So
Eisner Award winner.
yeah, a sweetheart of a man, Matthew
Matthew
Wilson.
Wilson.
I adore him. Yeah, it is absolutely stunning and beautiful. And one of those things about Russell is like there are, if you don't, maybe if you're not so deep into comics you don't notice these things, but I hope you do, to whomever is listening, is look at the layouts, look at the page borders, the panel, actually like the shapes of panels,
Yeah.
the framing of different shots. You know, Russell doesn't, sometimes he'll do square panels where it makes sense, or rectangles, but he'll just throw odd angles into things and he'll break them up and he'll cross them over, or he'll, do really interesting and weird stuff with panels. He will like full bleed art from one panel that is behind everything else on the page, but not
Yeah.
others. There's one really stunning sequence in, I think it was 5. It was somewhere in here where there were certain panel borders that looked like they were burning pieces of paper, and some
Yes.
that weren't. And I was just like, that's such a little thing, but it adds such emotion to the story that is being told, and
Yeah.
the feeling of this page and what they're trying to get across. It is such a smart piece of effective storytelling. It is he is, to me, a very fearless artist in the way that he is able to present the story and tell it. And I haven't looked at the scripts in quite a long time. I remember looking at them a long time ago, but I think there's just this way that Jason and Russ can work together that is just absolutely spectacular.
The flow of the story is never interrupted by the art. It's never like an abrupt, like, oh, the writer wants to take us someplace, but like I don't really understand what the artist is doing here. I don't have that moment. I think that's maybe why, like, I will go back and read Dodderman Thor like just on a whim, like just for whatever. And like I do the same thing with Ribic Thor, I do the same thing with Del Mundo Thor. Like all these artists, they flow so well with how Jason presents story, that there's such easy reads. Like I don't feel like they're not tedious. They're not, like I'm not, chunking my way through this story. It just feels like it's like I'm on a breeze, and Jason's just taking me to a great, satisfying conclusion of the story. There are a few characters that are highlighted in this that I wanted to talk a little bit more specifically about.
Yeah.
And there's kind of that kind of the junk drawer of like all the different heroes that aren't Thor, that aren't Jane, like Spider-Man, Cap, Punisher, Venom, even the Black Knight is in this. Black Knight is a fan favorite of mine. Cy Spurrier, if you're out there, I would love to talk Black Knight with you. But then there's Iron Man has a Iron Man and Shuri do great things to the Celestial. That's the Avengers Mountain. Black Panther. There's so many different characters. Was there a character in this Marvel Universe crossover, Ryan, that really like stood out to you? Felt like Jason like maybe put a little bit more extra oomph behind a certain character for you?
It's a good question. You mentioned Daredevil already, and I think that was something that Jason connected with early on, and it shows on the page. Um, Punisher, clearly, we know Jason has stories to tell with the Punisher and has been telling some stories, and I think he and Russell do some really interesting Punisher stuff in here. Russell draws such a fierce brick wall giant mass of a man with the Punisher throughout this, and he's interesting and definitely terrifying. I think this is early on in Jason's Avengers stuff,
Yeah.
but you can tell he loves Robbie Reyes Ghost Rider. He loves Blade. He's
Yes.
having fun with Jen Walters. You can tell that like he's glad to put his his version of the Avengers in here in a way. Yeah, there's those characters are I think the ones that probably stick out the most, but
Yeah.
they tend to get a little bit more of the playtime throughout all this, outside of obviously the Thors and Odin, Freya,
Yeah.
and such.
There is a moment, I think there's a moment where somebody sees all the heroes walking up. They're like, I thought you said the Avengers were coming. He's like, yeah, we're the Avengers. And Blade is like, yeah, I'm as surprised as you are. Like, and I love this self-awareness that like someone like Blade has, because, there was a time where like Blade doesn't show up in these big, team books where, with Captain America and Iron Man, it's, it still was even kind of weird for me to see Blade. I was like, oh, the vampire guy, he's an Avenger now. That's where we're at.
That's the beauty of the Marvel universe, though, right? It's like, we have such a rich tapestry that you may be like, but soon once you read that story, you're like, yes, 100%. Well, of course, Blade's always been an Avenger. What are you talking about?
he was right there with Ant-Man and the Wasp, and and Thor and Iron Man and Hulk.
He helped fish Captain America out of the drink. Yeah, of course.
he took on Loki in issue 1.
Mm-hmm.
But there's this like you said, this rich tapestry of all these different characters that I really do think one of my favorites that showed up in this pretty prominently at points was Spider-Man.
I was just gonna say, and I'm looking at the cover and I'm like, you know what? And I was thinking about this earlier. Spidey is one of the books, and correct me if I'm wrong, that Jason hasn't done a ton of Spidey work. He did the Astonishing book with Spidey and Wolverine, with Adam Kubert on art, which was really good, right?
But as far as like that? Oh gosh,
Astonishing,
I think you're right.
I'm usually right, but
to the Google machine. But I don't know.
Astonishing Spider-Man and Wolverine, which is really good.
But has Jason ever done a main Spidey book?
Not that I can recall.
That would be interesting. I remember when we talked to Jason a while back, I was, the day before we had talked, I was just thinking like, man, who's a character I would love for Jason to like get his hands on? And in that interview, I was like, hey, when the ideas for Thor were coming up, what were you gonna do? He's like, well, I was gonna do Captain America. And I was like, damn it, that's the one. I was like, Captain America or like Daredevil, like extended runs. I mean, there's really not a character that I can imagine him doing poorly. So I even said at the end, I was like, jumping over to the distinguished competition, I was like, I would read the hell out of a Jason Aaron, Assad Ribic Superman story. I would read the hell out of that, but that is my fantasy booking running amok. So later on they become more prominent, but obviously if it's a Thor, Asgard, 9 Realms story, Freya and Odin are going to be included. And Freya and Odin both get these makeovers halfway through this where Russell kind of just goes nuts. And the designs and the places that Freya and Odin show up, did any of those parts, Ryan, like really just like jump out to you? Was there a part with one of them that was significant?
I mean, Jason writes really incredible for both of those characters every time. Like, I hate his Odin in that sense that like he's so well written, but he's just the worst, just such an asshole. And so it's always fun to watch him. And his Freya is just so incredible. Like, she is the rallying cry of all of Asgard. Like, she just is, you would follow her to anything, it feels
right.
Like. And that shot when she's got the bitter blade and the energy is around her, and Russell draws this purple hue of a kind of suit of armor / weapon on top of her, where she's commanding that, and it's so gnarly and so cool. The Iron Allfather suit is dynamic. Actually the first shot of Odin I love so much, where he's got those big smooth horns. The first time we see him, within the first couple of pages, that reminds me of Tim Curry in Legend, and his devil character in that, and the horns on that, and the way it moves. And so like I could picture the way Odin's head would move, and it made it very surreal and really cool. I think, I remember Russell doing these designs and seeing that first look of like, why can't I own a winter jacket that is Captain America's jacket when he goes to Jotunheim?
It's
Like,
so
I want
good.
that. It's amazing.
It looks so comfy.
Yeah, it's so great.
Oh man, that's the line where it's going back to Spidey, where Spidey shows up and he's like, you guys get cool weapons, and I'm just here with a shield. Like, who runs into battle with a shield? Oh wait, hold on. And Cap just like gives him a look. It's great.
Yeah.
One of the other main characters of this crossover, understandably, is Malekith, the dark elf, the king of Svartalheim. He has been a constant thorn in the side of Thor almost this entire run, and he finally gets his comeuppance here. But Malekith, I think for me, and I would love to hear like what you think on this point. I think he took a massive jump up in, like, he went from being like, yeah, he's kind of dangerous, to like, oh, this is Malekith's like big play.
Yeah, it's a thing where you can make any villain scary and cool and interesting, even above and beyond, with the right story and the right storyteller. Jasmine, my co-host on Marvel's Pull List, and I were joking about, because she had never read Jason's run on Ghost Rider, and so she kept reading and it's just like, Jason makes Big Wheel cool. Jason makes the orb cool. I was like, yeah, because they can be cool. They can be cool and scary and dangerous if you tell it right. And that's sort of like, the beauty of great characters. There's something there for them. And Jason takes something who was already really cool in Malekith, but like ramps everything up and makes him scary and evil, and gives him a long, slow burn to the point where, if you are just picking up the trade for War of the Realms and you read the recap, like the 3 or 4 paragraphs of recap at the beginning, you're like, holy shit, all this has already happened. He's done all of this already. What? So yeah, Malekith is delicious too. He's just
yes,
the venomous and unabashedly treacherous. He is not gonna play fairly. He is going to watch you suffer. He's like and revel in it. And I think Jason, being a big wrestling fan, he knows the joy of a villain. And a lot of his friends who are wrestlers, and my friends who are wrestlers, having talked to them about playing that kind of character and how much fun it is to just be a bad guy and to know that what you're doing is making people angry. And if you can get someone to feel pissed off and want to hurt you, you're doing your job. And Malekith is he is just doing things to hurt and to inflict pain and inflict his will and enjoy it. And he wants to watch you get angry at him so he can, enjoy that suffering even more. It's delicious.
As a fellow professional wrestling fan, I have to ask you this. What wrestling villain is Malekith?
Ooh, that's good.
I mean, obviously there's a lot of layers there, but like, a lot of great bad guys in wrestling history.
I mean, in some ways he's, Mr. McMahon, because he's orchestrating so much, and he is at points in command of everything, and everything is at his whim, and he's taken over. He's he's gobbled up his quote unquote competition and all that stuff, and he's gonna laugh at you and he's gonna conspire against you. Like, it was me, Austin. It was me all the time. It's like the moment where he reveals to Thor at the beginning that he was actually Loki and he tricked you. Haha, see you later. Like in the context of the story, there's no greater villain that could be.
That, I mean, Mr. McMahon's pretty hard to beat, almost impossible to beat when it comes to bad guys. And oh man, that makes Thor Austin in this. I'm behind that.
Right?
I'm behind that.
Hell yeah, he wants to drink, kick ass and drink beer. That's all he wants to do.
If Thor would have ended this with a stone cold stunner, I would have been completely like over the moon. So another two other characters that I just wanted to highlight real quick because they are kind of the heroic hinge points of Jason's run on Thor. It's Jane Foster and Thor Odinson. Jane is back to being human. She's beaten cancer, but halfway through this storyline, she feels like she can do more. She feels like she's being called to more. And we know what happened last time she was called to do more. She sacrificed herself to get rid of Mangog. And she knows what sacrifice looks like. She knows what being a true hero looks like. But there's that secondary calling of what do I do now? And she the main tragic loss of this crossover is Brunhild. When Malekith viciously decapitates her. And it's just like, it was so kind of vivid because all you see Brunhild like on her knees after she's fought an army, and Malekith just is continuously that sleaze, and that's how the issue ends. He decapitates Brunhild, and Jane Foster feels like she can do more. She's anointed kind of temporary all mother by Freya as she goes off to do her thing. But Jane then gets to show up at the end with the hammer of the War Thor, the one that drove Volstagg insane, which the War Thor, talk about a comic that needs to be read with metal music playing. That comic is insane. But Jane shows up as in her Thor attire at the end, and then she gets kind of her next how do you say this? It's kind of hinted at what she's going to do next after War of the Realms. A little teaser. So, yeah, and we'll talk about that more with Omega next time. But what did you think of Jane's place in this story, Ryan?
I mean, I love it. I think I've told this before, but sitting next to Jason at a creative retreat when the day it was announced that that Thor would be a woman, and the internet backlash and furor and horror and blah 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 blah, but knowing that Jason had this plan, had this story, had this idea, and was doing really great work with Jane, and then seeing what Jane Foster as Thor has meant to fans over the last, almost 10 years.
Yeah.
At conventions or through, just being in my place at Marvel and hearing from folks, it's incredible. So it is imperative that she had that role in this storyline, that she had such a big place, that, she was, given the keys to the kingdom, so to speak. That she was put in charge, and nobody balks at it because she has earned that. She is rightfully there. And then she steps up one more time, sacrifices, for herself, could potentially kill herself, but no, that's the mark of the hero that she is. Whatever, this is what needs to be done, so I'm here for it. Jane Foster's the best.
You can't really see it, but up in the top there, that's my Jane number one. That'll be always probably one of my most prized possessions. Whenever I'm having kind of a bummer day in the studio, I just kind of look at that one. I'm like, all right, we all have great things within us. But then at the end, she discovers that she's got this new weapon attached to her, and we learn more, and that's what launches us into Jane Foster the Valkyrie, which is such a great series. Al Ewing, Jason Thorne Grunback, lots of things are about to happen for Jane, and spectacular. The last character is kind of the headliner. You said this is a Marvel Universe story, but this storyline has been largely built through Thor's journey of becoming, of dealing with Gore and realizing that he is unworthy through the acts of original sin, and then becoming worthy again, but then also not having Mjolnir anymore, and going through hammer after hammer after hammer, and there not being enough Uru or metal in the 9 realms to keep building him hammers. But then Thor goes through so much in this crossover, but he reaches that final point where at the end he defeats Malekith, he gets Mjolnir back, and Odin out of nowhere bows to him and pronounces him All Father. It's a great moment.
Yeah, but I know what you mean, but at the same time, it's not out of nowhere. That's the thing. There's so much in this story, and there's so much that has been built up over the course of several years of Odin being an obstinate asshole and being not the greatest leader and not the greatest father and all this stuff that he it is called him being strung up and defeated side by side with his wife and watching his son do what he couldn't.
Yeah.
Yeah, if he didn't bow down, then like somebody needs to smack him upside his dumb head.
I remember, speaking of, you're right, and we've been kind of building towards this for a while. I remember a few weeks back I read the it's Thor, I think it's Thor issue 10 of the Jason Aaron and Mike Del Mundo run, where Thor and Odin have their big kind of daddy issues fight. But the story is told through Odin's perspective. And Odin, I was almost brought to tears by this book because Odin says like Thor needs to become basically the god that I could never be. He needs to become, what my father said I couldn't be, what my father never told me, that I could do these things, but I know my son is going to be a great god, and I know that he's going to be greater than me. And I kind of it was hard as I was reading that and reviewing it with Joe Sabino. Both and I were just like in awe of this storytelling. And then we get to the end of War of the Realms and we're like, oh my God, it was there the whole time. Like, if to me it felt out of nowhere because like we've been fighting, frost giants and trolls and all this, and then Odin just takes the knee and you're like, oh right. These two have been through a lot together, and there's a lot coming, after this. But I loved that moment at the end. I mean, literally issue 6 ends on that image, right, Ryan?
Yeah. It's sorry, I was looking at the omnibus. I have the omnibus pulled up on my tablet, which freezes my iPad because it's 1,500 pages long. If anybody out there has not read this and you don't have all this and you want it in one package, the digital version is like $40.
Yeah.
And the print, you can get it, some places still have it for like 90. It is so worth the price of admission to get all of it. It's because it gives you a bunch of issues. It has that issue you were just talking about, Thor number 10 is in the omnibus. But yeah, issue 6 ends, War of the Realms issue 6 ends with all hail all father Thor, and with the caption at the bottom, the beginning, which is such a great way to like that's what a lot of our big event stories need to do. They need to tell a really great, captivating, wild story that feels like it has stakes and danger and cool stuff and moments and all this stuff, but you can wrap it up, but then propel us forward. What do we get coming out of it? How do we build on the Marvel universe and the mythos out of this? And so as we've been talking about, there's a lot that you mine from this.
Yeah. Do you have any other it's a large story to kind of bring to a close, but is there anything else from this story that you feel like listeners just need to know or maybe need to be aware of as they reread or they read it for the first time? And then we're going to get to a little bit of a fun segment on this Halloween episode of Across the Bifrost.
I don't think there's anything necessarily that you need to know for this. I just, enjoy it, reread it, like savor the big moments here, the wild stuff that's going on, and really dig into those crossovers. Look, if you haven't, get yourself a Marvel Unlimited subscription. We have a full reading guide on the site with everything that is tied into this, so you can read all the various stories and see all those moments. And the bit we were talking about earlier with Moon Knight is like Hercules, gets dropped into a situation, he fights side by side with Moon Knight, and like, I want to see that.
Who wouldn't want to see that?
Yeah, there's a whole bunch of things going on in here with Venom, and I remember seeing and listening to Jason and Donnie talk about how they could play off of each other, and how the Jason could give some stuff to Donnie out of this that sets up some things he would be doing in his Venom book, and like those interplays and seeing that come to fruition, like you don't have to read Venom out of this, but maybe you're like, wait, what happens to Venom after this? Because he like
Right.
slithers off and he's like, her head is clear. Like there's a lot of really gnarly fun stuff
Yeah.
in, around, and because of War of the Realms.
And I think that's an appropriate enough place to end the conversation about the main issues of War of the Realms. Like I said earlier, we are going to talk about some of the tie-ins and some of the companion material. Joe Sabino was nice enough to send me a Art of War of the Realms book.
Nice.
So we're gonna dig into that.
And so good.
We'll do it. It has been quite an enjoyable little like kind of like coffee table book to read. It goes through the whole thing, and I'm so excited to talk to you listeners about that later on down the road. But right now, we're gonna put Ryan through the Thunder round. Many moons ago, Jason Aaron, I was gonna do a lightning round of questions with Jason Aaron. He said, "Doesn't Thunder round sound better?" And I said, that's why I need editing. So because this is coming out on Halloween, we are going to do our spooky Thunder round that we did with Joe and Brandon in previous weeks. So Ryan, are you ready for the Across the Bifrost Thunder round?
I am ready.
Fantastic. First question. What was the first scary movie you ever saw?
That's a tough one. I vacillate on my love for scary movies. Probably the first scary movie, Ghostbusters, scared me as a 4-year-old when I saw it.
I'll bet it did.
Because there are really scary things in there, but it's not inherently a scary movie. I don't know that I can pinpoint the first scary movie, but I remember seeing, Nightmare on Elm Street as a kid.
Oh wow.
3 and 4 I watched a lot, which are less scary, in some ways, but still pretty intense. So I probably put those in there.
That good options. The second question is vampire bite or zombie bite?
My question back to you, who chooses zombie bite? Give me that vampire bite, baby. I want all that comes with it. I want my wife and I, we're every year for Halloween we pick a topic and we watch movies around it. So last year we did the entire Halloween oeuvre, and then this year we're doing all vampire stuff. And then some days, life gets in the way and we can't watch a movie. So we've also been watching the Interview with a Vampire television show, which is way better than it has any right to be. It's so good. But like watching it, I'm like, man, there's some stuff about being a vampire that sounds really cool. They get telepathy. They could just set things. They've got like pyromancy. They can at times just float. They're super strong. They've got like all these powers. And in that fiction, like there's, various versions of the vampire myth where sometimes they can consume human things, like they can drink and eat, mostly drink. And like what the downsides aren't as many.
You're right. Maybe the zombie bite one is for like if someone's like, I just kind of want to like chill. I don't really want to do much. But vampires, like, it's a pretty good option.
Yeah.
What is your favorite Halloween candy?
Probably Reese's peanut butter cups. Those are my jam. I could eat those all year long, but like, I have like 3 bags of candy waiting for the children because we bought a house, and it's great because kids come and we have skeletons and all kinds of stuff. We do our house up right for the kids, and I know they're gonna come, and I'm just like, I just want to dig into this bag and eat that damn candy. But yeah, it's probably the cups.
So we're both dads of young kids. And I know on Halloween night when we go out trick-or-treating, my son's going to be Spider-Man and my daughter's going to be Bluey. And I'm just going to be like, where's the good houses? Because like there's a strategy to it. Then you got to find the good stuff. It's you got to teach your kids about sharing, so they give you the good stuff. Question number 4. What is the best Halloween costume you have ever had?
All right. So, I'm not very good at Halloween costumes in general.
Okay.
And as I mentioned earlier, my mom worked a lot and was, she did all the best. But I remember one year, I must have been like 9 or whatever, 10. I did this weird mashup of various things. So I had a chest plate that was like a barbarian six-pack and pecs and stuff like that,
Yeah.
and a Jason mask on
Okay.
one side, and like it was at this point I know that there was another mask I put facing backwards, and I had a Freddy Krueger glove, and that was my costume. And it was just like this sort of mishmash thing of, oh, it was a Bart Simpson mask. That was what it was. It was a Bart Simpson mask on the other side.
Of course.
And like I like had blood and made like fake blood on the chest. I don't know what I was doing, man. I was a weirdo kid and it worked out. That's my
Choice.
favorite.
Oh man, that is you could have given me 100 guesses and I wouldn't have come away with
No, because it
that.
doesn't make any sense.
I mean, so quick aside, like you recently went to New York Comic-Con, and
Yeah.
Comic-Cons are known for having good cosplays and
Oh, yeah.
and costumes. Well, did you have like was there like the best cosplay you saw at New York Comic-Con?
Yeah, I mean, there was some incredible stuff. We had a costume contest I helped co-host on our stage, and the woman who won the contest had built a Khonshu costume based off of Khonshu from Marvel Studios Moon Knight. And in the show and in the comics, Khonshu's head floats above the body.
Yeah.
So what she did was built the whole it is a beautiful costume, and her head is at chest level. Sorry. Her head is at chest level, and it goes above her head, and there's a hole open about like 6 inches above her head, and she had these small, look like tendrils, like ethereal strands, but they were holding up the head, which was attached to her head. So when she moved her head, Khonshu's head moved as well.
That's so good.
She built the costume, the chest piece, to be so seamless, but she could open a door to reveal her face, or actually just like see better out of it. And so it's like, like an 8.5 foot tall costume all told, and she had the staff and everything. She crushed it. It was so good.
That's so cool. Like, I don't even know Khonshu was on the table for cosplay.
Oh
like,
man,
that's so good.
Yeah.
Last question of the Thunder Round. Who is your favorite creepy Marvel character? Your your standard like Halloween type characters.
Standard Halloween type characters. I mean, I like our Dracula a lot. I think he's cool. He's gone through a lot of iterations. And he's an interesting, version of that archetype. I think he's pretty great. I really like our new Werewolf by Night, Jake Gomez.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think he's fun. He's got some cool aspects to his powers and his abilities, and like the idea that he like listens to music to help focus himself and keep the monster at bay. And I think one of the issues that had him listening to like System of a Down or something like that. And I don't know. I think that there's some cool stuff, and I'm glad we're doing more with him. We just put out an issue on our Marvel's Voices Infinity comic with him that was really cool. Him fighting Wendigo, which is gnarly.
I feel like that had to have happened before now. That feels like an obvious one.
I know, but I don't know that it has. I was talking to the writer of that story just yesterday, and Owl Going Back is his name, and it was pretty cool. Yeah,
it's a great idea.
Yeah.
Well, Ryan, thank you so much for joining us today to talk about War of the Realms. I know this is a story that means a lot to you, means a lot to us, that you would stop by and chat with us. How can people keep up with you, and do you have any like cool stuff you want to plug going forward?
Yeah, no, this was my pleasure. It's easy to talk about great comics. It's why I do what I do. It's half of it's pleasure, half of it's the job. Anybody can find me at Agent M on Twitter or Instagram. You can see me pop up on Marvel's YouTube page or Marvel social media here and there. Excuse me. Yeah, of course, listen to This Week in Marvel and Marvel's Pull List. Especially if you want a sense of every comic that's happening every week, and conversations with people behind the scenes of the comics. Marvel's Pull List is a lot of fun, and we've got some cool stuff planned for the next year. I think it's going to take the show into some interesting places, so looking forward to it.
Fantastic. I mean, I listen to Marvel's Pull List every Tuesday. You and Jasmine, like I said at the beginning, I've listened to you guys talk about comics more than pretty much anybody. So now Jasmine was on our show to talk about Death of the Mighty Thor. You've been here for War of the Realms. I feel like we've completed. We've come full circle.
Yeah.
So everybody, I hope you've enjoyed this episode. We're going to be doing some companion stuff. Be sure to check out our Patreon, join the Thor Corps, and you'll get like all of our bonus episodes and early episodes and stuff like that. So thank you very much for listening today. I've been Ryan. He's been Ryan. And until we see you next time aboard the Rainbow Bridge, I encourage you, each and every listener, to stay worthy.